Okay, so hello and welcome back to the third lecture for this week 9. So, in this week the topic is on wastewater collection, treatment and resource recovery. That is the topic. So, we are covering the basics. Within that we have already talked about collection system, the like brief as it says basics. So, we did the basics of the collection system and we have started looking at the sewage characteristics which is needed for design of the treatment plant. So, in this video we will continue our discussion on the sewage characteristics, that is the focus of this particular video, and then we will get into the treatment plant. So, one of the major concept that comes when we talk about wastewater, when we talk about organic loading on surface water is the biochemical oxygen demand. It is the BOD. The BOD numbers, BOD is a very popular concept. If you are looking at any organic loading to any water body, the number one question that gets asked is, okay, what is the BOD number? So, we have a certain, like in for example, in the surface water, any treated sewage or any industrial effluent getting discharged to surface water in the country, the BOD number is 30 milligrams per liter. So, it should not have more than 30 milligrams per liter when it gets disposed into the surface water. Similarly, that is in general for India, and in near the certain cities, if you go to CPHO manual which I mentioned earlier, if you look at the manual, they talk about that in detail. Those of you who are interested more, you should go and look at that manual. So, near certain cities the number is actually 20 milligrams per liter in terms of what can go into the surface water. Then there are some scenarios where we are hearing that National Green Tribunal NGT is even thinking of asking the government to bring it down to 10 milligrams per liter. So, we need a good working wastewater treatment plant which can meet 10 milligrams per liter. It is not easy, because we are struggling to meet 30 milligrams per liter right now throughout the country, and only 50 in terms of the capacity, less than 50% of the sewage produced in the country actually are getting treated. So, we have lots of sewage which is going totally untreated into the surface water. So, from that scenario, going to 10 milligrams per liter as the discharge standard for BOD is actually a long way to go, but that is where the goal is to go to that level. So, a lot of work is needed in that area, a lot of investment. So, as I keep on saying throughout this course, irrespective of what background you will be working on, water, resources, energy, all these things comes in picture in every domain, and so you need to have a basic understanding, you need to have an understanding of the environmental issues associated with that. So, one of the important concept is BOD. Now, what is this BOD? Biochemical oxygen demand. Now, why it is biochemical? Because it is the biological reaction plus the chemical reaction both together. So, that is why it is called biochemical oxygen demand. Now, how it is defined? It is the quantity of oxygen utilized by the mixed population of microorganisms to biologically degrade the organic matter in the wastewater under aerobic condition. So, because we are talking about surface water, so it is an aerobic condition. So, when receiving water should not have too much of organic matter loading. What will happen if there is a too much organic matter loading? Our dissolved oxygen concentration will go down. Sorry, why it will go down? It's because this organic matter getting into the water, organic matter needs degradation. So, we will have this mixed population of microorganisms, they will try to biologically degrade that organic matter, and in the process of degradation oxygen is needed, because degradation, when we say biological matter degradation, it is essentially an oxidation process. So, oxygen is needed for that to, and if the oxygen is needed, where the oxygen will come from? It is the dissolved oxygen present in the water. So, what will happen? Our dissolved oxygen concentration will go down. Now, why it is a problem? Because if the dissolved oxygen concentration is going down, we have several aquatic species, fish and lot of other species present in the water. They need certain amount of oxygen to survive. So, if that oxygen goes down, what will have? What will have something like, we will have a scenario of fish kills, or many of the organisms will die. What is fish kills? Means a huge, like a good population of fish suddenly dies. Why? Because the DO number going down drastically. So, fish cannot survive, they need oxygen. to survive. When the oxygen is not there, and then it becomes a kind of a dead water, we call it. There is no fish, then a lot of other, it impacts the water quality. So that's why when you see certain stagnant water with lots of organic loading, you start seeing a lot of smell happening in there. No oxygen left into the dissolved oxygen. When the oxygen is not left, things will start changing into lack of oxygen phase, which is called anaerobic phase, and in the anaerobic phase things starts becoming like a smelly. So that's where you start getting all those smell. So BOD is the most important parameter in water pollution control. I am sure that each one of you, depending on whatever profession you will end up with, if you are working with anything related to water, whether from a legal side, venture capitalist, investment, you're talking about sensors for water, talking about some softwares to develop water quality modeling, whatever. So it's you will be encountering this term in your life at some point, which is BOD, which is the biochemical oxygen demand. It is the most important parameter in the water pollution control. It is used as a measure. What we do with that? It is used as a measure. It is a measure of organic pollution as a basis of estimating the oxygen needed for biological process, and as an indicator of process performance. So with the BOD number, indirectly what we are getting is organic matter, the amount of organic matter presence. So it is the amount of organic matter presence in the receiving water, in the surface water, and that dictates DO level, and low DO level creates a lot of problem for aquatic species, for the health of the water. So what happens here? Organic matter with oxygen, and in the presence of microorganism will produce CO2, will produce water, and produce new microorganisms. BOD test 5 day, we do it for 5 days. That's the internationally accepted protocol, 5 day 20 degrees centigrade. And but in Indian conditions, or a temperature of similar to Indian condition, we also do 3 day at 30 degrees centigrade. So both are used, but this is what is the international protocol is 5 day 20 degrees centigrade, and that's what you will do in most of the lab when you work in any environmental courses which has a lab component. So BOD measurement, what are the things we require? Say if you walk into any water quality lab, you will find these. So there is a incubator which will keep the temperature. Remember what was the temperature? 20 degrees centigrade for 5 days or 30 degree for 3 days. So either of those temperature you need to keep it there, whether you go for 5 days or 3 days. And you need some BOD bottles, you need conical flask, measuring cylinders, wash bottle, burettes, and pipettes, and all that for getting those exact concentration. So you, and then this is what is known as the BOD bottle. So we need this BOD bottle. So we put the I think steps are right there in the next slide. Yes. So what we'll do, we take we prepare the beaker containing dilution water. So 5 ml of calcium chloride. So we get some calcium chloride, produce some dilution water with calcium chloride and magnesium sulfate. This calcium and magnesiums, they make it a moderately hard water, which is good for the microorganisms. And then from there we get it to the beaker containing the dilution water. We also add 5 ml of ferric chloride. That ferric chloride helps in keeping the nitrogen demand less, so nitrogenous BOD demand less. So it's mostly focused on carbonaceous BOD, which is like CBOD, not NBOD. CBOD is a carbonaceous BOD, which is what is coming from the organic matter. And then from there it is like a serial dilution water, add 5 ml of phosphate buffer as well. Then we take it 30 ml of the field samples, remaining 270 ml of the dilution water, and 10 times dilution to 2 BOD bottles. And then each one of them has blank, and the sample needs to be titrated immediately. So we can do the titration after like 5 days. The sample needs to be titrated as per the procedure. Other option is you measure the DO in the beginning and then measure the DO at the end using a DO meter and then DO probe, and then you compare and take the number. So How it is once you have the data at the beginning, at the end, what you do, you take BOD at initial and BOD after 5 days, then you put multiplied by the dilution factor to get the actual value. So, here BOD 5 20 means biochemical oxygen demand milligrams per liter 5 days 20 degree centigrade, initial DO of the diluted wastewater for 15 minutes after preparation. So, and then final DO of the diluted wastewater after incubation for 5 days. So, based on that we calculate how much is the oxygen demand. So, it is DO initial minus DO final. Now, one thing is that we do never want this to be close to 0, because if it goes close to 0 it becomes difficult, because the machine cannot identify that, and if it goes to 0 that means that maybe water has more capacity to consume the oxygen. So, that is why we have several dilutions. So, if you get these values close to 0, then you have to actually go back and perform more dilutions and come up redo the BOD test. So, why dilution is needed? As I said, for a valid BOD test, the final DO should not be less than 1 milligram per liter, because BOD test is invalid if DO final DO's value is near 0. Dilution can decrease organic strength of the sample. So, that is like a kind of helps in terms of having the reaction happening properly. By using dilution factor, actual value can be obtained. So, it is dilution of waste by direct pipetting into 300 ml bottle. So, we put that is how dilution is done. So, BOD analysis, what is happening in aerobic process, oxygen is present. So, we have heterotrophic bacteria oxidizes about 1/3 of the colloidal and dissolved organic matter to stable end product like CO2 and water, and convert the remaining 2/3 into new microbial cell that can be removed from the wastewater by settling. So, overall biological conversion process sequentially with oxidation of carbonaceous material as the first step, known as the carbonaceous oxygen demand. Organic matter in the presence of oxygen. So, we have this organic matter in the presence of oxygen. So, this is the amount of oxygen that is being consumed. So, that kind of gives us. So, once the oxygen is consumed, my DO value will start going down. So, that is how we measure the initial DO and final DO, and it will produce all those CO2, water and other stuff. Okay. So, this is again many times the question is also asked like why 5 days. So, this is a typical BOD curve. So, where we have this is the BOD in milligrams per liter, these are the number of days at the bottom. So, the purple line, and then there we have another line on top. So, this is known as carbonaceous BOD. What does that mean? It is because of the carbon present, that present carbon presence. The presence of carbon, the presence of carbon is has a demand for carbonaceous BOD. Nitrogenous BOD is the nitrogen, which is like hell, which is a demand that is coming from the nitrogen. So, ultimate carbonaceous BOD is L0. So, that is the ultimate carbonaceous BOD. So, that is the maximum BOD which can be there. So, it is in 5 days we get nearly 60 to 70% number. So, in 5 days this is the 5-day BOD that we get at this particular time. So, we use that value as that is the value typically used for all the standards and other stuff. So, this is a typical BOD curve which showing you a carbonaceous BOD as well as the nitrogen BOD. So, that is in terms of that. Now, there is also the ultimate BOD, which was, if you go back to the previous slide. So, this was the ultimate carbonaceous BOD which we were talking about. That's the ultimate curve. This is the maximum organic loading, maximum oxygen that can be consumed or can be consumed from that particular organic matter. So, as you can see, the line is going like that, and then it's flattening out. So, it will become something like this. So, that's your carbonaceous ultimate carbonaceous BOD. So, this is the value that is that can be used for that, but that's the value for ultimate carbonaceous BOD. That's the maximum BOD loading, but in what we are interested in, what happens in 5 days, and ultimate is also like a theoretical BOD, like what is we can calculate how much it will be. So, ultimate BOD is defined as the maximum BOD exerted by the waste. So, maximum oxygen that could be that will be consumed So, the carbonaceous oxygen demand curve can be expressed mathematically as BOD at a time t is L0 1 to the power of 10 to the power of minus kT. Now, BOD t is the biochemical demand at time t, L0 is the ultimate BOD, and then t is the time in days, and k is the reaction constant also in days. So, like per day. So, this is how ultimate BOD is like the BOD is defined. So, let us look at some of the math numbers which kind of makes life so that you can understand things what is going on. So, if there is a BOD test where the initial DO of the 2% diluted sample is 6 milligrams per liter, and like so, and we found that after 5 days of incubation, that's its final DO, initial DO, it should be DO, and then final DO after 5-day incubation at 20 degrees centigrade is 2 milligram per liter, 5-day BOD of the sewage sample. So, what is BOD? It is the initial. How we will get the BOD? We will look at the initial DO minus final DO. Initial DO is what is the initial dissolved oxygen present in the water. Since BOD bottle is totally sealed, so there is no oxygen supply happening there. So, we get the initial DO, and then we have final DO after 5 days. So, the difference between these two, initial minus final, is gives us how much is the DO consumed. So, based on the DO consumed, we calculate how much is BOD number. So, here solution for here, if you look at BOD for 5-day BOD, so initial minus final times dilution factor, so 6 minus 2, then 100, and they take 2, what does it say somewhere here, initial DO of the 2% diluted. So, yeah, there is a 2% dilution is there. So, it is 100, like 2% means 2 milligram of wastewater, and then 98 ml, 2 ml of wastewater, 98 ml of dilution water. So, that is why 2 out of 100. So, this is so we get 200 milligrams per liter is the what the value is for BOD 5. Now, the dilution factor is number of times sewage diluted with distilled water. For example, 2, we said 50, 100 by 2. So, that's what it is. So, that's the kind of a DO level for like 5-day BOD of the sewage sludge. So, it is 200. See, the standard that I mentioned to you earlier in this video was 30. So, we have to treat it up all the way to 30. So, that is what we will talk about in a minute, how to start those treatment process. Now, here in the second problem, it says in 5-day BOD at 20 degrees centigrade is 200, find 3-day BOD at 15 degrees centigrade and 8-day BOD at 30 degrees centigrade, and K20 is 0.23 per day to the base of E. So, now there is a like we have to find the K value as a function of K has a function of temperature. So, KT is K20 1.047 times T to the power of minus T minus 20. This is a formula that is used for finding out the K as a function of temperature. So, we do know K20 is given to us, I think, and we have to find out K15 and K30. So, we can do that K15 and K30. So, now if in terms of BOD, if you have to calculate, it is L0 1 minus e to the power of minus K20 T. So, it is so 200 is the if 5-day BOD is 200. So, what was the ultimate BOD? That is we have to find out. So, we found out this ultimate BOD first, and now when we know the ultimate BOD, we know that we can calculate BOD at a time t with the formula that we had in the previous slide, that BOD at time BOD at t is L0 1 minus 10 e to the power of KT. So, L0 we need to find out first the L0. So, we got that value, which is 293, and then you can plug in those numbers. This is L0, 3-day BOD, and then 5-day BOD can be calculated accordingly. So, that is 8-day BOD that gives us those values. 8 days are very close to the ultimate BOD actually. 3 days is much less, 5-day will be kind of in between. 5-day was 200, isn't it? 5-day was 200. So, So that's how we calculate these BOD numbers, as look at the temperature function of K value as a function of changes in K value as a function of temperature and all that. Okay, the other big good concept which is other like very popular concept which is used a lot in the wastewater industry is that BOD COD ratio, looking at the ratio between the BOD and COD. Why it is important is this BOD COD ratio kind of gives us an indication of out of total organic matter that is present, how much can be readily degradable by the organic matter. So if it's readily degradable by organic matter, it becomes part of the water, and then it gets into the like a food chain, or if it gets broken down, then also kind of it gets into the food chain. If it's in any contaminant that we have doesn't really gets broken down, doesn't really get into the solution, it just stays in suspension. For example, plastics and other stuff, it is just floating right now. Unless it gets broken down, it becomes a problem, but it's just the intact plastic floating around, which is also not good, but at the same time that possesses much less risk compared to the other one. So, and to get the idea of how bad the situation is in terms of organic loading, many times doing BOD, which requires a 5-day exercise to do the BOD test, it's a common practice nowadays to also look at the COD number. So once we have the BOD and COD both the numbers, we can come up with a correlation between them as well. Usually higher the BOD, you will see the increase in COD values as 2, unless there is some error or something. The waste is slightly very different in nature. In general, BOD numbers are much higher than the COD numbers are much higher than the BOD number. So if you look at BOD COD ratio, that's why the ratio is important. If ultimate BOD versus COD, that will lies between 0.92 to 1, then the wastewater can be considered to be fully biodegradable. If we say that BOD 5 by COD between 0.63 to 0.68, like 63 to 68%, then wastewater can be considered to be fully biodegradable waste. So, and also we look at the relative stability, which is the ratio of amount of oxygen available in the effluent to the total oxygen required to satisfy the first stage of the BOD demand. So that kind of gives us how stable the water body is. So once you have this BOD number, once you have this dilution number, you look at the K values as a function of temperature and different loading and all that. There is also another concept which is known as the population equivalent. Now this population equivalent refers to the amount of oxygen demanding substance. So it looks at the amount of oxygen demanding substance measured in BOD or BOD 5 in wastewater, whose oxygen consumption during biodegradation equals the average oxygen demand of the wastewater produced by one person during one day. So it's kind of gives us, like, if you put things in perspective of per person per day, what is the organic loading. So here in terms of the calculation, you look at the total standard BOD of industrial sewage per day, you get the total standard BOD, and then standard BOD of the domestic sewage per person per day. So this is the industrial, then we get the domestic. So it gives us like a average standard BOD of the domestic sewage. So if you look at the is average standard is around 0.8 kg per person per day, but so it's that's your like around 0.08 per person per day. So that's it gives some idea about how much like loading that is coming from the organic effluent, which is coming from municipal sewage sludge, industrial wastewater and all that. Okay, now being said, that kind of covers the characterization part. As I said, we don't have that much time to go in each and every topic in great detail. Wastewater treatment by itself is a separate course actually, and then I think I mentioned to you that if you are interested in wastewater treatment, there is an NPTEL course being offered by Professor Manoj Tiwari. It's rerun this time, so you can always register maybe next year when it are being offered. So here we are just doing a snapshot of that particular course. So then the next step after we have understood the wastewater, first we have looked at how to collect and bring it to the treatment plant. Second, we also looked at how to understand the wastewater characteristics in terms of BOD and other numbers. Now in third we will now be getting into what is the wastewater treatment, how to treat the wastewater. So it's usually also called sewage treatment or domestic wastewater treatment. What is the goal? We are removing the contaminant from the wastewater. It could be both runoff as well as domestic. Runoff many places is not part of the wastewater, as we discussed in the first video, towards the end of first video as well, that many places runoff is actually separate system, but in some places runoff is part of the wastewater as well. That's called combined sewer outflow, which we looked at. So that's so we'll, in terms of the wastewater treatment, it's essentially removing the organic matter and pathogens, bacteria and all that. So why we treat wastewater? Because untreated wastewater will be harmful to health. Breeding sites for all insects, pests and microorganisms can cause environmental pollution and affect ecosystem. So that's the reason why you see in terms of in terms of like importance in terms of treatment of the wastewater plant, and that's the reason the interest from several countries around the world to help in terms of the wastewater treatment system. So treatment procedure is as qualified. We go for first preliminary treatment, then we go for primary treatment, then we go for secondary or biological treatment, finally if needed for tertiary treatment. So this is the typical way how the treatment happens. So what we will do is we'll start talking about the wastewater treatment in more detail in the next video. So for now, let's stop here. So far in this particular week, we try to talk about the sewerage system, how to collect the wastewater from individual homes, put it in those pipes and bring those pipes to the wastewater treatment plant. So that's what we have focused on, and we also try to understand what is there in the wastewater, what is the BOD, what is COD, and what that mean, how they compare and contrast and all that. So then we will be looking, now the next step is to go in detail on the waste treatment system, which we kind of did a little bit towards the end of this video. So again, thank you. I look forward to seeing you again in the next video, and have fun. Keep our discussion board active, follow instructions over there as well, and then if any queries, you can more than welcome to send like a message through the discussion forum. Again, thank you, and see you again in the next video.